order our work session that October 23rd, 2018. We have two items to go through: Park and Rec Master Plan update, and then a UDO update. So, with no further ado, turn it over to Dina.
Hi, thank you. We're going to start off with our friends from ETC. They are the ones who administrated the survey for us over the summer. And I would like to introduce Mr. Ryan Murray. He's going to be on conference call with us and go through the presentation.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Ryan Murray. I'm a project manager here with ETC Institute. We administered the 2018 Parks and Recreation Needs Assessment Survey for Waxhaw. Happy to be here. It's a little difficult for me to, field questions not being there in person. So if you have any questions, just flag down John or somebody, and they can stop me, and we'll get those questions asked to the best of my ability. Any further ado, we'll go ahead and just get going here. Just a little background on us. ETC Institute, we're a national leader in market research for local governmental organizations. We've surveyed over 2 million people in the last 8 years or so, 10 years, 900 cities, almost every state. We've done work in Canada, Ethiopia, and a couple other different countries, and we're happy to be here. So the purpose of your study was to objectively assess the usage, satisfaction, and needs for a wide range of parks and recreation facilities and programs. The main purpose of the study is really to identify opportunities for the town to better serve recreation needs to the community. And we do that a few different ways, and as we go through the results, I'll kind of explain what we're looking at and how we can use that to better plan. Methodology: 6-page survey, took about 15 minutes to complete. We administer by mail and online to a randomly selected of township households. Sample size is 400. We actually kind of blew that out of the water with a total of 634 completed surveys. And the demographics of the survey accurately reflect the actual population of the town. Confidence level is 95%. Margin of error of 3.5%, 3.6% overall. So any results that we talk about today will have a margin of error plus or minus 3.5%, 3.6%. Here's just kind of the high-level overview of what we learned. Overall, very high satisfaction ratings for parks, facilities, and programs in Waxhaw. There was a lack of awareness, and that's really the biggest barrier to usage of programs and facilities. It's something we see nationwide when we ask respondents to indicate, what prevents them from using programs or parks more. It's typically that lack of awareness, and we'll talk about that in a little while. The highest priorities for facilities included walking, biking, and fitness trails, greenway trail systems, indoor aquatic facilities, splash pad, water park, and a dog park. For programs, the highest priorities that we found were adult fitness and wellness programs, workshops, senior adults programs for those 50 up, and outdoor challenge or adventure courses. There's definitely strong support based on the survey results for making improvements to the parks and recreation system. So respondents in Waxhaw appreciate what they have. They use it quite often. They're very satisfied with it, and definitely they're interested in making improvements. So first topic here is usage of parks, facilities, and programs. We asked respondents in question 1 to indicate if they'd used 9 different parks or facilities within the past 12 months. Almost 70% of households indicated they used at least one of the 9 facilities. National average is about 78%. So a little less usage than we see nationwide. But when we go over here to how respondents rated those facilities that they've used in the last 12 months, we see a lot of blue here. And as we go through the presentation, those pink or red responses are going to be those more negative responses. Yellow is going to be more fair or neutral type responses. And anything in blue on my charts typically is going to indicate an excellent, good, very satisfied rating, something of that nature. So very high ratings here for all of the facilities that were rated, and this is based specifically on users who had used one of these 9 facilities. So if you'd used it, you were asked to rate it. Based on usage, we saw very high marks here. As we progressed through the survey, we were asked, have you participated in any of these following activities that Waxhaw offers? The WAA sports programming is really the most used. At least 29% of respondents have participated in at least one program or activity in the last 12 months. Again, that's just a little bit less than the national average, but still rather high usage numbers. 7% participate in fun days in the park, and 2% participate in the coffee hour. We then asked respondents to rate the quality of those programs they participated in. Again, this is based on actual participation. So if you had not participated in one of those programs, you were asked not to respond to this question. 81% rated the programs as excellent or good. We only had 3% answer poor. 16 or so percent answered fair. So very few individuals overall answered fair or poor.
Got a question for you. I just
did.
want to make sure it's clear.
Yep.
Events were not a part of, as an activity, included in this survey, correct?
It's a different section.
But when it says recreation programs or activities households have participated in, that is not talking about events or anything like that.
Events is going to be a different question.
Okay.
It's in the survey, but it was further.
It's not in this.
It's
Not on that particular slide.
Yeah, this particular pie chart only reflects the participation in these 3 activities or programs. And then we move on here, and we ask, which of the following organizations do you or members of your household use for parks and recreation facilities or programs? Waxhaw was definitely far and above, the most used, followed by Homeowners Association. More than likely, from what we find, those are pools or small, neighborhood type parks, small jungle gym, or even a trail could be considered some kind of homeowners association. And then public schools, which is quite often very common, Union County Parks and Recreation, and then state parks, other municipal parks, and then trailing off athletic associations, churches, YMCA, and then we really just have a major drop off after that. But it is good to know that Waxhaw is the most used, so people are utilizing the programs and facilities that the city's offering. And what we get into next is barriers to participation, and this is what I kind of brought up in my overall slide. The main reason, just kind of blowing everything else out of the water, was that people just aren't sure what's being offered, and that can be kind of a combination of a few things, but more than likely, what that is it's based on the way that they're receiving information, and that's what we found through a lot of our other research. Some people just don't know the location of parks and facilities, which again is just a lack of awareness. But what we find is that 69% of people get most of their information about programs, facilities, and services through word of mouth or social media. Sometimes social media, sometimes it's confusing whether or not to know that a website or an account is actually the official account. So people are probably following other friends and family and getting information off of shared posts and things like that. So if we're more able to align the way that people get information with the way they want to receive information, we'll have better luck improving those overall usage numbers that were just slightly below the national average. As we saw on the previous slide, 40% indicated they use the town website, 40% would like to use the town website, but more people would be more interested in using social media as a preferred method of getting information. Bolstering social media accounts, or either just making it aware that this is the overall social media account for the Parks and Recreation Department, could go a long way, in aligning these priorities and ensuring respondents are getting the information needed to participate, because there does appear to be some need and some desire to participate.
Okay, just pause for a minute, just as we transition to topics. Let's just pause and make sure there's no questions from the board.
I did have one more of a comment than a question on the slide that says Q11, reasons preventing households from using recreation programs, facilities more often. The question, when I filled the survey out, I looked at the same thing. There's no question point here for lack of facility. The facility I'm looking for is not available. Lack of equipment is the closest thing I could find to anything saying, we have program not available, but we don't have facility not available. For someone saying, I would use X facility, but we don't have one. So that's a data point that wasn't collected there. Just a comment.
Yeah, programs of interest are not offered was on there, but yeah, there was no facility of interest not offered. What type of facility was not offered that you would be interested in using that wasn't available?
Well, for myself, we don't really have a large open green park in this town. We don't. We have we have a skate park, we have a children's park, we have a lot of athletic fields. We don't have a large open green space. So for me, that was one thing I looked for. You know, I would use facilities and programs more often were that facility available. And that wasn't, that just wasn't a data point that was able to be answered or collected there. Just pointing that out.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is that accurate? There are no open green spaces in Waxhaw that are available or run by the community?
We have some small parks, but we don't have a large, you know, and for people who, you know, there seemed to be a lot of interest in here in Splash Park and we don't have that facility. So no one could have said, oh, I'd use a dog park, but oh, facility not offered. Oh, I'd use a splash park, oh, facility not offered.
So more like an open-ended kind of a question to see what would...
Well, just because we have the section program not offered, facility not offered would have been a good data point, I think.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Luckily, the next section that we're going to is
does go more into that.
Facilities.
Yes. Yeah, I just pointing that out.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so I think
Was there any ability for anyone with a similar question to Commissioner Lee to be able to write in, you know, if the facility was not available or the green space was not available, was there a place on the survey that you could have entered that information?
There's a question at the very end that you can add comments if you wanted to put something extra. But that was just, it was an open-ended kind of thing at the end.
Sounds like that's a great segue to topic 3.
Go ahead, Ryan.
yeah. So topic 3 runs through question 3, and basically what we asked respondents to do is indicate for 29 various facilities or amenities. We were asked if the respondent had a need for that type of facility. So although there may have been, you know, a lapse in some of the items that were listed there on question 11, question 3 did have another option and did allow respondents to indicate, you know, open green space or something like that, although there were a couple options on here that I think could be construed as, you know, open space or green space, like the Greenway Trail System, like that. But these numbers here show that the percentage of respondent households that indicated their household had a need. And we're very specific in the way we ask this question to include the entire household for respondents. We don't want to ask just if that one individual has a need. You know, likely if a grandmother or grandparent is living with a, you know, a younger household, if the grandmother is the one who responds to the survey, we want to make sure that she's answering for those children in the household too, to account for that entire household, you know, their entire recreation needs. So we basically kind of have a qualifier question here. So we asked respondents if they have a need. As we saw here, you know, 59% had a need for Greenway Trail Systems, 81% for walking, biking, and fitness trails. Those are the two programs with the most need in the community. We then asked respondents how well parks and recreation facilities are meeting the needs of respondent households. So again, you know, just kind of working off of question 11, although that may have been a barrier to usage, you know, we should have been able to kind of pick up some of that information on these questions here. So we asked respondents, and as I mentioned earlier, you know, those pink numbers are the not met. So we were asked respondents to indicate for every one of those facilities their household had a need for, how well their household need is currently being met by Waxhaw. You know, there was a large group of respondents throughout the entire question here that indicated their household's needs are not or partly met. That's really what we saw a majority of responses of, except for just a few at the top. Baseball and softball fields and soccer fields seem to be meeting the needs of households. But a majority of these, you know, households indicated their need was not being fully met. If we look back, we had walking, biking, and fitness trails and greenway system. As we see here, about 30% of respondents indicated their needs for walking, biking, and hiking trails, or walking, biking, and fitness trails were being met. So about 70% had some kind of unmet need. And then about 27% or so indicated their need for Greenway Trail System was being met. So a large proportion of those respondents indicated their needs are not being met or partly met. We then estimate using the Census Bureau numbers on how many households. Sometimes it's difficult to understand percentages. If we put them into the sense that there's roughly 4,000 households in Waxhaw, and we say that almost 2,300 have an unmet need for walking, biking, and fitness trails, it really can put things in perspective. And then we see that about 1,700 households have an unmet need for green wheel trail systems, and then that just kind of cascades down. But overall, the major need in the community appears to be walking, biking, and fitness trails. And the the reason that I mentioned that we asked this question specifically for household usage and not individual usage is to really get a better perspective of how household needs are being met. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these items that are going to top the highest priority investment rating lists are those items that could be used regardless of age or ability. So older respondents, younger respondents, respondents with very small children, respondents with older children can all use walking, biking, and fitness trails in the Greenway Trail system, and that's why we're going to see that these items are probably at the top of our list as we move forward. Although we ask respondents to indicate how well their needs are being met, we also like to ask respondents how important these items are. If my need's not being met for pickleball fields, but it's really just not important to my household, then we shouldn't prioritize that item heavily. When we're doing an overall plan for a community this size. So we saw here 60% of respondents indicated that walking, biking, and fitness trails is one of the most important items to their household, followed by Greenway Trail System, and then just really leveling off after indoor aquatic facilities and dog parks. When we run our priority investment ratings for facilities, we found that walking, biking, and fitness trails was, the item that had the highest unmet need in the community, as well as the highest important level. So it got a rating of 200, followed by Greenway Trail Systems, indoor aquatic facilities, splash park, and dog park. Those are really the biggest bang for the buck items. These are the items that are going to have the greatest impact on the greatest number of homes in Waxhaw if we were to prioritize them at the, in any kind of, budgetary or any kind of other prioritizing fashion. So these are the items that the most number of households are going to get the greatest benefit from if we were to, develop them further or add extra amenities or something like that. Anybody have any questions? We're about ready to go on to programs.
Questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Westlake.
Just clarification. So what really is the difference between walking, biking, and fitness trails and Greenway trails? Like Greenways, I'm assuming is part of the thread trail, that type of, or how do you, is there a difference?
I would define it that, a lot of folks will think greenways, like if you're up in Charlotte, the Little Sugar Creek Greenway, so it's it's a paved. A lot of folks can get out, strollers, bikes, everything. More so with the walking, biking, fitness, that may be more of a single track, more of a dirt type trail.
So is that what
they
more
do
the
interchange.
thread trail would go under, or which?
Say it again?
The thread trail, would that be?
Because it has different, you've got dirt ways on the thread trail, then you go to gravel, then you go to sidewalk, then you go to pavement. So that would probably be with that multi. The greenway is more like connecting your neighborhoods together, kind of thing. They're more of your sidewalk system.
So the track around Town Creek Park is a good fitness trail.
It's a good fitness. But, for example.
But the rest of,
Yeah, because it goes over to Prescott, but
Right.
the next year we'll have that connection from Nesbit, from that back end, and that connects to the thread trail you've got partially dirt, then you've got a bridge, so you've got multiple, you wouldn't be able to take a stroller on part of the thread trail over on that side.
Any other questions? I guess we can move into programs, Ryan.
Great, thank you. So the same structure, same question pretty much for programs was asked of respondents. We use basically the same structure in order to kind of be able to compare apples to apples when we line these two things up. It's very tough to say, programs are more important than facilities. I would never say anything like that. So that's why we keep them separate and we stack them up, to compare themselves to one another. So what we found is, again, far and away, there was just one particular item that the greatest number of households, 55%, had a need for, and that was adult fitness and wellness programs, followed by workshops, outdoor challenge, adventure courses, adult sport leagues. Those things will kind of level off, and then we see major drops there between water fitness programs and youth and wellness programs, and then it just continues to level off as we get down to e-gaming or other. We ask again those respondents who had a need for the program, whether or not their need was being met, fully met, mostly met, partly, or not met. Again, we see a lot of yellow and pink on this slide, just indicating that there's a high level of unmet need for a majority of these programs. Youth sports leagues does seem to be the program that Waxhaw is fulfilling the need of most. but then there's always a need for special events. And sometimes when we find that communities, their biggest barrier to participation or usage is what's going on. Sometimes we see special events top these lists, more so because people aren't sure what's being offered or when it's being offered. So although you guys there may think that, hey, we're offering a ton of special events, or hey, we could do better on that. It's kind of a a play off of the why are we not using. If you guys are offering a ton of special events, it's probably that people just aren't hearing about them. If you're not offering a bunch of special events, then this would be a slide to pay attention to. We then again estimate the number of households whose needs are being unmet, partly or not. Adult fitness and wellness programs had about 2,000 out of the 4,000 households in the community. So about half of the households in the community who had a need, indicated that their needs are not being met. And that's just kind of overwhelming number here, and it's going to follow over into the importance. Those adult fitness and wellness programs are also very important to respondents, which means that it tops our priority investment list. Adult fitness and wellness programs, workshops, senior and adult programs, 50 plus, and outdoor challenge or adventure courses are those 4 items that, again, are going to be the biggest bang for the buck. But we do have about 5 items right underneath that are very important as well, starting with water fitness programs, nature programs and environmental education, adult sports leagues, adult art, dance, performing arts, and theater arts, and adult continuing education. All those items were just kind of right there on the edge of being a high priority, but just didn't quite make the cut just based on our cutoffs. Any questions on the recreation program priorities?
So just a curiosity question, the fact that youth sports do not appear, can we draw any conclusion? Are those being adequately covered? Were they not asked? Are we comfortable with WAA, WY, SAA, and all those other acronyms, or do we know?
Yeah, if we look here, youth sports leagues was that item that was, had the fully mostly met. It was about youth sports programs, right?
Yep.
Yes.
That was the question. Yeah. So youth sports lessons, youth sports programs, youth sports leagues are all kind of up here towards the top of this list, just indicating to us that there's a need, but that need's being properly met. And if we look back here, there's just fewer households that have a need for those youth sports, 28% or so for youth sports leagues, 27% for youth summer camp programs. It's just a quarter of households in the area even indicated they had a need. So with such few households indicating they have a need, kind of combined with the fact that the needs are being met in the community, this number remains low here in this slide for most of those programs, and that really translates to the importance as well. If there's not a high number of households who have a need, those programs are not going to be important to a large majority of households, and that's going to show in our priority investment rating.
It's an interesting point,
Not
given
that there isn't
given the
need in
demand
the
that we
community or that it's
often
not
hear
being-
from the sports leagues
Go ahead.
and the cost that it takes to build those fields.
Okay, I think we move on to
We ready to move on?
number 5.
Great. And what we're looking at here is improvements to the Parks and Recreation system. First question asks, how supportive would you be of the town of Waxhaw increasing connectivity and walkability between parks? This is something that, is oftentimes receives a lot of support, and what we saw is that almost 80%, 78% of respondents are supportive in increasing connectivity and walkability. Only 5% are unsupportive. Another 5% of respondents are unsure. It's more than likely just due to, needing a little bit more information on the question before they answer it. Likely, what they equated this question to was, if we're going to increase walkability or increase connectivity, it may cost a little bit to build that infrastructure. So that's why we probably saw about 5%, in the not sure, and 11% in that neutral column, is that they just weren't sure what the repercussions of saying yes might be. We then asked how supportive would respondents be of the town of Waxhaw developing unused or undeveloped land within the town for recreation purposes. 83% are very supportive of this item. Again, we saw, roughly 7% unsupportive and 5% not sure. Fewer neutral responses. Those neutral responses went more towards the unsupportive responses in this one. And again, if I had to guess, this would be a factor of just not knowing, what the ramifications of being very supportive or somewhat supportive of this option would look like without some, without a little bit of backup information or a little bit of, how's this going to get paid for information. I think it's difficult for some respondents to answer these types of questions, and that's why we see that split there. But again, overwhelmingly supportive. Question 13 asks about the types of potential items the town could develop that are most important to respondent households. These are all things that just would be done to help improve the Parks and Recreation system. Question 12 just asks, question 12 is kind of the qualifier question. It says the town of Waxhaw is considering the possibility of developing new programs, amenities, and facilities, and from the list of 20 items to check which ones the town could develop that you or your family members may use. So that was question 12. After question 12, we get to question 13, which asks which 3 of those potential programs, amenities, and facilities that the town could develop from the list in question 12 are most important to your household. These are really the items that kind of get to the meat and potatoes of that question. 85% feel at least one item is important to develop, so there is overall support for developing the park system in Waxhaw. Only 15% said that they don't want anything developed. That's more than likely a function of I don't want my taxes to be increased. But what we're looking at is roughly 30% of respondents are interested in greater connectivity among parks, 25% a multi-generational or indoor-outdoor facility, which always receives high levels of support. And then 23% were interested in mountain biking trails, hiking areas, followed by turning undeveloped areas into parks, and then we kind of have a major cutoff, after musical events and concerts and some of those other items that respondents just weren't as interested in. What we go to next is question 15, which is which features would be most likely for your household to use in a multi-generational community recreation center. We saw here about 25% of respondents indicated that that type of facility would be important to their home. We then asked respondents to kind of indicate which one of those items would be most used by their household. We saw weight room, cardiovascular equipment area, indoor running, walking track. Then we kind of had a group here that were all aligned before it drops off: recreation, swimming pool, water feature, indoor lap lanes, and aerobics, fitness, martial arts, dance, theater space, just some general classroom type space with instructional room. Those were really the most important items to respondents. So again, prioritizing how likely respondents would be to use those items. Kind of looking at the priority investment rating on how well the needs for some of these things are currently being met. Question 21 asked respondents to indicate which actions to improve the Parks and Recreation system would they be most willing to fund with their tax dollars. The previous question was asking, how supportive would you be of Waxhaw taking the following actions to improve the Parks and Recreation system. It was a list of 17 different options. Here we asked respondents, which ones are you most willing to kind of put your money where your mouth is. 33% indicated developing greenways, trails, and enhancing connectivity, which is really a theme among all these questions. Respondents in Waxhaw really were quite clear in what they wanted the city of Waxhaw or the town of Waxhaw to do, and that was to develop greenways, enhance connectivity, and do that with trails. Trails were one of those facilities that respondents were most interested in using. It kind of flowed over into the programs, and it flowed over into improvement priorities as well. So 74% are willing to fund at least one improvement. This is the response where I would typically see about 50% of respondents answering none, or saying that I don't want to fund any of these with my tax dollars. But to see 74% of respondents select at least one item was quite interesting. It just shows that people are interested in helping Waxhaw really develop their Parks and Recreation program. Before I get to my summary, do we have any questions about this group of questions?
Any questions?
Carry on.
Great. In summary, we'll just kind of go through the top priorities again. Again, Waxhaw saw very extremely high satisfaction ratings. People that do participate are very satisfied. However, there is a lack of awareness. As somebody else mentioned, we may have missed one of those items as to the reason that you don't participate, but that should have been kind of picked up in the priority investment rating and some of those other priorities, including that open green space for families and citizens to use. But primarily, again, overall, it was just a lack of awareness, and we can kind of close that gap by meshing those priorities of how respondents currently receive information with how they prefer to receive information, and doing that can really promote higher levels of usage and participation. As we saw, facilities, walking, biking, and fitness trails, which was the major theme of the entire system, along with greenway trail systems, indoor aquatic facilities, splash park, water pad, dog park. Those were the facilities that were most important. And then adult fitness wellness programs, workshops, senior adult programs for 50 plus, and outdoor challenge and adventure courses were the most important programs. And again, those highest priorities are just kind of, in layman's terms, the biggest bang for your buck. Those are the items that are going to have the greatest impact on the largest number of households in the community. But overall, there's very strong support for making improvements to the Parks and Recreation system, particularly when we're talking about facilities. And more than anything, it's walking, biking, and fitness trails, along with greenway trail connectivity throughout the entire system. Any other questions or anything else that we want to go through?
Yeah, I have one. I'm going back to, I guess it's slide 31 and 32. I guess when I look at that number, none, 15% and 16%, it stunned me. Seems very high, and I'm trying to,
Which slide are you on?
just went back to question 13 and question 15.
It's on the screen up here.
I'm trying to understand. So if somebody responded none, I wouldn't have a second, third, and fourth choice. And so
We exclude those.
So am I reading this? Because this shocked me that, like on question 15, is none the second highest priority in terms of, because I don't know what else I'd respond to if I responded none. And
No.
okay, kind of explain that, because I don't know where I'd go after that, and it just kind of sits out there like it's the second highest blue.
So
That just surprised the heck out of me.
So 85% of people indicated at least one item is important to their household, for the town to develop. 15% said none, and if you say none, then we disqualify you from the rest of the items. So if you mark none, then your answers aren't included in the second priority or third priority or anything like that. So we had 85% of people, and if you look at the numbers above that, those percentages are based on 85% of respondents. The 15% said that none.
Okay.
Wouldn't, use any or none of these are important to my household. Reading the tabular data might be a little helpful for understanding these types of questions a little bit more and how we exclude those respondents. But yeah, so if you select none, and you're exactly right in the way that you put it, you're not included in any of these other responses.
Yeah, and the visual just kind of deceptive.
By any means. But yeah, we include the none in there just to make it clear that there were some respondents that just indicated none.
Okay.
You don't want to hide any of that data or and sometimes it is a little bit more confusing to include it, but we feel like it's a little bit more forthcoming when doing so.
Okay.
Same with this slide. 16% of respondents said none, 84% of respondents make up the top items.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions?
Well, I'm kind of going back to the greenway walkability question I had before. So now I know it says connectivity among parks, but if we just included just a pedestrian, the sidewalk plan for the whole town, and it's not just connecting parks, but it's connecting neighborhoods and just the whole town together, that would be included in something like this, where you're talking about fitness, bike, whatever, it would just be the sidewalk system? I mean, would it be?
It could be included as part of that system.
So we have a pedestrian plan now
Right.
that shows some of those connections, and this would just be adding to those connections and building from there. That's more like that greenway.
Okay.
So you're connecting neighborhoods, you're connecting parks, but as you continue to develop here in Waxhaw, you're also connecting to some of those social nodes, the shopping centers and restaurants and things of that nature. And the idea is just to get people out walking and biking and maybe leave the car home a few times.
Right.
Other questions?
So Ryan, remind me how many surveys were sent out?
Yeah, approximately 3,000 surveys to collect 400. 634 came back in, so it's a response rate of about 20%.
Okay. Any other questions for Ryan?
You're welcome to visit Waxhaw anytime you want.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to.
Any other questions? If not,
Okay. I think we're going to cut you loose, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. If you guys have any other questions, just send us an email.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I think he's gone. All right, so where's the other one?
There it is.
Did you give them, or the whole report that I sent you?
We have this one.
No, I meant for ETC. Remember, we had the whole full.
nothing else.
Y'all got this.
Yeah.
I knew there was some
And
emails.
there's an
early
email.
on.
I sent you the whole, the big one.
Big one, if you
The
want to
big
get
one.
into the.
Oh, that,
The
yeah.
nitty-gritty
I
one.
thought you meant this presentation.
Yeah.
this one.
I can resend it out again if you wish.
So, in addition to the community survey, we did a series of community conversations in July and again in September. And so I wanted to go through some of that, as well as, am I going this way?
You don't want
Oh, guess we need to turn.
no, you're good.
There we
Yeah.
go. It's a little faded, but I can also put this board right here.
Yep.
There we go. Make sure that's up. One of the first things we looked at when we came back, was it upside down? When we presented to the Parks, Recreation, Cultural Advisory Board, we put together this exhibit down here, which looked at everything that had been done as part of since the 2012 plan. And some of this was shown to just show that we had fairly equitable distribution of either land acquisition, park development, greenway connectivity, throughout the town. And that it wasn't all happening in one area. We had different phases going on, and we just wanted to see for ourselves everything that had come out of that plan. And the big onus that came out of the 2012 plan was the development of Dina's department and her directorship and her staff and Parks and Rec Advisory Board, which is all down in that box on that plan as well. So, a lot of things happened as a result of the first plan. As with plans, you guess that they're going to be good for at least 5 years. Hopefully they're good for 10. There are a lot of municipalities that are coming up on 20 years on the same plan and haven't changed it. So either they're not doing a whole lot with their community, or they've just it's kind of fallen by the wayside. So Waxhaw has realized that obviously we need to update the plan. The demographics have been changing quickly. Some of the development has gone in different growth. You've had people coming into town that are looking for the things they did from wherever they came from. So this forms the bones of this update that we're doing that will be from 2019 or 2019 to theoretically 2029, but probably 2025, somewhere in there. So we had a series of, to piggyback on top of what ETC did with the survey, we had a series of community conversations. And so in July, we had a daytime or a morning session out at Nesbitt Park, and we had an evening session at the American Legion building. And then we came back here right after Labor Day, did a session down here at the Water Tower, and then finished up that evening in St. Matthews. So out of all of that, we had, and I put 66 plus, we had 66 people that were willing to sign in and say they had attended. There were a few from the board that came. So it's been good to see you at not only those meetings, but at the Park and Rec Advisory Committee. I like to have all the governing bodies involved. We have a lot that just say, come see us at the end, and then we'll try to figure it out. We'd rather have you involved throughout, so thank you for participating. We had a combination of adults and children, and I don't blame parents for not signing in their kids, but if we did see children come with parents, we at least went over and put how many we thought came with mom or dad. So because some of those children did vote. They took an active voice in what we were doing. They got excited by some of the imagery we showed and said, we want to have that in the town of Waxhaw. And we asked 6 questions at each of those, and we did not change up the information between the two. We kept them the same. So we did have a map up to show where folks lived, and we were spread pretty much throughout Waxhaw when they would put a dot on where they lived, whether they were in the town or just right on the edge, but we got good representation on both sides of Main Street and east and west. We asked where did they do their recreation in Waxhaw, and we listed all the parks, all the facilities that are offered here, the top 5 that came up, and some of these you'll notice come in line too with the survey that ETC did, and we asked folks when they came in if they had received a survey, and I think we might have had 2 people that had received one of the mail out surveys. So we were gathering some additional supportive data in this process. So
What is the definition of the 12-mile creek greenway?
The thread trail area from,
But where to where?
so it'll be starting at the suspension bridge and eventually going through the Prescott community.
So that was included.
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, and we actually broke it down even further and said, if you use 12 Mile Creek Greenway, do you get on at Town Creek Park or do you get on at HC Nesbitt? And a lot of folks didn't know that there was another entrance if they were at one entrance, because that's the one they used. So actually Town Creek Park had a lot more folks getting on there than at Nesbitt. But it still remained the top recreation activity in Waxhaw. Nesbitt is the second one, which goes in line with the question earlier about baseball, soccer. So there are those folks that are using those facilities. The water tower came in just a little bit after that, just because of the flexibility of that space. A lot of folks do attend events there. And then you would think David Barnes being one of the older parks and mostly geared towards children, so that gets a lot of use. And then the skate park was after that. And we tried to pick the top 5 of each of these. When we asked what they did outside of Waxhaw, because some folks do go outside for things that either aren't offered here or just a different environment, obviously Cane Creek Park came in first. Most of those folks are going out there to swim, boat, or fish, play disc golf. There's a few that go out to play disc golf and hike the trails. That was the other. So Dogwood Park, now that that's been developed up in Wesley Chapel. I should know, I did a master plan for that a long time ago. A lot of the folks that go up there primarily because there's a dog park there and they can do a measured loop around the pond. Then Marvin Eford Park came in. Folks weren't as excited about having to pay an entrance fee, but they like the fact that there are community gardens there and nice playground and some trails they can get on. A lot of folks go to Andrew Jackson State Park primarily for hiking, and then Weddington Optimus Park mostly for the folks who have kids that are playing in the sports leagues over there. We asked about activities. So what activities are you currently participating in? And it didn't have to just be in Waxhaw. It was to find out what do you participate in. So by far, and this was the biggest on any of the questions we asked, community events, just it trumped everything we had. And these were part of the imagery boards that we had if you came to so that folks could understand what they were looking at, particularly if it was a new activity that maybe is not offered in the area. But the adult fitness and wellness, youth sports leagues ranked up there, the senior adult programs, and then the adult continuing ed kind of tied with outdoor challenge courses. And by that, these are folks that are going out to the Whitewater Center or finding places that offer zip lines, adventure courses, those types of things. So it pops up again in what popular activities would you like to see offered in Waxhaw, and that was the #1 vote getter, was some type of an outdoor challenge or adventure course. Something that really isn't offered in this area. So we have to think, well, is that a niche that Waxhaw might like to get into that other folks aren't offering in the immediate area? Saves people a 35 to 45-minute drive to the Whitewater Center. Goes in kind of in line with the nature programs, environmental education, which Ryan mentioned in their survey, youth summer camp. workshops, and then we had kind of rounding out, they were all together, the adult continuing ed, teen programs, and water fitness. And then the other two questions that dealt with amenities, once again, this is almost in line with what we saw. A couple of surprises. There's a fishing pond up there in the top 5 that several folks wanted to see. And I know we have a fishing pond on one of the properties that the town owns. Could be. So pretty much active. And then weight and fitness equipment usage are up there in the top 5 on uses that currently occur either here in Waxhaw or somewhere where they go do that. Where they want to see the amenities offered in Waxhaw, an outdoor amphitheater, which could be another reason folks are going up to Dogwood Park, because they do have a small amphitheater up there. Definitely a high interest in some type of a community center, an indoor multi-purpose space, the dog park, which comes up in a lot of these plans everywhere now. Splash pad water parks, picnic areas, and then fishing pond in Waxhaw. The trails, the dog parks, anything revolving around water are typically up in those top 3 that we see in the communities we work in. Often are on the top wish list of a lot of folks. Those that have YMCA's, even on those lists, because there is that group of folks that may not be able to provide that membership fee to get in, and maybe it's something offered on a smaller scale. So we take that data. We certainly take all the data that ETC has pulled together for us. Talking with the folks that attend these, which is nice to do these kind of one-on-one, so we can have conversations and really find out what everybody's thinking about. The one downtown, certainly had a lot of business owners that attended, and they were certainly pushing for parks downtown to drum up business. But some of the other ones where we had grandparents coming with the grandkids, they're looking for intergenerational types of things that are offered in the area. Here we are towards the end of October. I think when I came before you at, was that April? Late March, early April, and our schedule was to be complete with this plan here at the end of the year, and that's still our goal. We're finalizing some goals and objectives. You have in front of you, I think, Chapter 6 from the 2012 plan as part of your package. And these were the goals that were put aside or put together for that 2012 plan that we used to measure this exhibit. Give that one up there. Looks like the mayor's missing a copy.
2 copies somehow.
Okay. The mayor has a copy. So we had asked the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee to take these goals and to look at some of the things they've heard as they've formulated their own sort of agenda and goals moving forward as a committee, to take a look at these. What have we done? What do we need to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years? And they have been providing us some of their goals, some of their thoughts for what they think, where they think Waxhaw needs to head. I'd like to give the board the same assignment, and I'd like to hear from you folks as well. I'd like to, might be slightly different than what we get, but that's what I want to see. I want to get as much feedback as I can. We're going to formulate all these, and then we're coming back in this room here in 2 weeks on November 6th to give an update for another community conversation to show what we have come out of the surveys with and where we think this plan is headed in terms of potential park offerings, program offerings, and where Dina's department wants to head. So that's only 2 weeks from now. I don't know how fast you can do homework, but I'd love to get stuff back by the end of next week, either through
How would you like
Dina.
to come back?
If you can email your top 4, I think is what we did on the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, and if it's just 4 bullets, that's fine. If it has description and support, that's even better for why.
So email Dina?
Email Dina, and she'll get all that to us. That's how we're doing it with the other.
You want tactical or longer term? Because you said
what would you,
could go to
whatever
20.
you feel is necessary, you'd like to include the plan, because we will have some of those recommendations that are a little more fuzzy down the road to get there, but maybe there are some things up front that we know are specific, particularly if, if you wanted a huge 100-acre park somewhere. Obviously, that's not going to happen in the next 5 years, but to start bottling up land and look for that location, that can happen, particularly as getting funding and that type of thing. So there are a lot of different steps as we develop, either continue to fill out some of the parks, develop some of the undeveloped land that we have as parks, and even look at new opportunities and new locations. So on the 6th, we'll invite everybody back, because we'll be in this room, to go through and get feedback from hopefully most of the folks that came to the other meetings in July and September, but probably some new folks that will educate, because we educate throughout the process.
So how are you going to reconcile? You're doing it independently. I see the potential for a disconnect. Park Advisory Committee have one set of objectives and the board have another. And how do you reconcile, because we haven't had a chance to talk with them, and I wouldn't want to be in front of the community, have you in front of the community giving the impression that we're disconnected. It's just we haven't had a chance to talk. How do you reconcile that, or what's your game plan to make sure that we look at it holistically and that we're moving forward to one set of goals? You understand what I mean?
Yeah, that's part of what we're doing on the 6th. We kind of lay it all out there, and then with the feedback we get, we start to narrow those down into categories, phasing, priorities. We'll have bring all that back to both groups, whether it's a joint session or, I mean, I've received some feedback from the advisory committee, and they've been filling these out independently. I assume. I don't think they've been cheating on each other's tests, but and I was able to easily group trail connectivity. Most everybody had something about trail connectivity as their top 4 priorities. Community center development, programming with some of the adult programming, community outreach, which speaks back to getting the information out about what's offered, facilities, mostly related to dog parks, some type of water park, and then there was another one, partnerships, for getting back with Union County and trying to form some partnerships. So those are just sort of in general how we've categorized them so far, and they've come back just in slightly different orders, but a lot of the comments are the same. And I can send you those sort of group captions. I mean, I can send you the comments. I don't want it to be influenced. But,
it wasn't so much that. It's just that I don't want to give the impression to the community that we're disconnected when we haven't even had a chance to talk. That's all I was being cautious about. And you answered it. You said you're going to solicit input and then put it back into the categories you see.
Right, and that's kind of what that 5th bullet point is there. And then December we plan to review with both entities, and then right after that we should be able to finalize everything and come back to get adoption put it up for adoption from both the Park and Rec Advisory Committee and the town board here.
So a curiosity question. As you looked at the 2012 plan, okay, that was written and we had nothing in place, the town had nothing in place. Did you do any assessment as to the progress made against this plan? Not that you have to give it to us now, but
yeah, a lot of that we showed on this exhibit down here in terms of facilities and programming, and then we've also looked at the progress in developing the department. We kind of went through and highlighted everything. Sat down with Dina, talked a little bit with the Park and Rec Advisory Committee, because there were some things in that plan that dealt with them as well, sort of strengthening that body. So we looked at a lot of those items, looked at what got purchased or acquired, and tried to tick off everything that had been done since 2012.
A lot's been accomplished. It's just, this was a very aggressive plan, and just moving forward to be realistic about our goals and stage that out for the future.
I'm as interested in, it's not a question of that a lot wasn't accomplished. Absolutely a lot was accomplished. But what did we learn? Is there something that we learned that we don't want to replicate again, that kind of stuff? And as long as you've captured that, that's great. It's because anytime you start from scratch, there's a lot of lessons to be learned.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything done wrong in the plan. Might have been done differently if were doing it now, then, because things have changed. But it did form a good basis to get things up and running, particularly with a town that didn't have a department. You know, I've done park master plans, site-specific plans for towns, communities that don't have a park and rec department, and you're working with some type of an advisory body. And then in the middle of that development, suddenly there's a park and rec department, and you start shifting gears a little bit because you get different feedback in there. But everybody would agree that if they hadn't started it, they wouldn't have gotten where they were. So, you know, I think it's been a good plan. Some of the goals may not have been specific on the terms of when do we want to do it by. And so they're kind of open-ended. We'd like to hone that in on this plan and put some more deadlines on them. The idea is to get goals that we can sit down and revisit every year and say, what did we accomplish? And that would be part of our recommendation, is to go back through and how are we doing? Do we need to shift some things around, have some opportunities come up that take the place of something that maybe was a little further out? Or is there an opportunity that was pretty far out that suddenly you have something you can't turn down, so we need to move it up? So those are parts of what we put in that plan moving forward.
Just out of curiosity, what time is November 6th?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock? Given that that's election day and that people will be coming home, is there any thought to be given to move it to after the polls close?
It was it had 2 days that this room was open, and we were between that day and a further day closer to Thanksgiving, so that was the reason why. But you wanted to know about...
Just me personally, I have trouble as a municipal entity trying to schedule a meeting while the polls are open.
Still are open?
Just
7?
7? 7:30? Is it 7:30?
Yeah. Can you get the people out after 7:30?
I mean, I know that's later, but I just...
Because most of the evening sessions we did for our workshops, you know, it was pretty quiet after about 7.
Understand. It's election day. That's
yeah,
all.
no, I understand. We talked about that because the other date was the Tuesday of Thanksgiving, and we felt families would be hitting the road with no school that Wednesday.
I'll just ask that you look at it.
Okay,
Okay.
well done.
We can be flexible.
Yep.
Questions?
Well, I don't know where this fits in, but one of the things as we discuss strategic planning for this, I think about the land in the inventory, property inventory, you know, there's a couple of things that have been mentioned through the Urban Institute report that we had about a property that we have. And so at what point do we want to talk about, do we want to hang on to certain land for parks, or do we, in this plan, are we going to be assigning something on this particular piece of property? I mean, where does that all fit in? Is that going to be in the plan, or is this something we need to discuss before this plan is finished? Do you see what I'm saying? That there's some land that we've discussed, it's linear park, say, that we've discussed.
I think what you're asking is ULI is going to bring something back, and I think you said in 60 days, yeah. So that will be, some of the assets there are, one or two of the assets might be park-related land. I would imagine that would come together. The master plan is the master plan, and that is our strategic plan, if you will. That's all encompassing, and so as we discuss it before we adopt it, we're going to have to, if there's conflicts, the body's going to have to come together to resolve the conflict. And I would imagine that comes as we review with the town board and before you get to the final presentation, I would imagine.
Yeah, we would want to include that information.
Yeah.
The idea is that this is still a living document when we're done, and things can be added.
Yeah.
You know, as you went with the 60 days, is that Did that start
a couple weeks ago.
a couple weeks ago? Okay.
So it's teed up to be
Yeah.
relevant on both sides for the board, to not have your hands tied
Right.
in any way, but you have full information in the month of December. So any recommendation from ULI would fit, right within the plan. So actually, I think the timing is great.
Okay. We're not going to make a decision on one end that completely negates the plan. Though you guys are talking at the staff director level.
I think the prime ULI recommendation about the building really doesn't relate to the park plan. And when you start talking about what happens with the gravel lot,
That's the
that
one
community
I'm completely
corner
apart.
type thing is a different discussion, but that'll be teed up. The building itself, though, Niven Price building, really doesn't
Right.
relate.
So you want us to complete homework by,
Next Friday?
And the next week would be great.
give us a specific date, please.
Thursday,
Thursday of
1st of November.
1st of November, okay. Give you an opportunity to. Remember,
Didn't even look at a calendar.
it's always important to put a date down. Other questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Okay. If you have anything else think of, send it to Dina. And
Safe
Yeah.
travels to Raleigh, Winston-Salem, where are you going?
Salem.
Yes. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break while the UDO team transitions and Dina transitions and everybody transitions. So.
Alex up here, she's one of our newer hires, our senior planner, and she's been helping me work through the drafts lately.
So bring what we have in for recycling of these. 'Cause I appreciate you making sure we have a current copy. That's helpful.
Okay, so I'm going to go over the background and go over what the comprehensive plan is and how we use that. The comprehensive plan bridge policy document, our unified development ordinance that we have currently, our unified development ordinance rewrite, and themes from the comprehensive plan and bridge document, and then our next steps. So in 2003, Waxhaw adopted a future land use plan, and before that time, we didn't have one. It provided the town with policy direction, but it didn't provide any implementation, so it wasn't ever fully implemented. It was a relatively simple document. In 2009, that plan was replaced with a new comprehensive plan that addressed the growing needs and priorities of the community that we were better able to implement, and was just recently replaced. So in October 25 of 2016, the new comprehensive plan was
But
adopted.
just a point of clarity, because the 2003 plan really gave the guidance that led to Curitan, Quellen, Lawson, and that higher density approach, Millbridge, et cetera, because that was all done
Yeah.
prior to 2009.
It was a shorter document, and a lot of the conditions and approval that came out of those were from conditional use permits and conditional zonings.
Okay, thank you.
So our most recently approved comprehensive plan took into account all the previous plans, and you can see on the screen all the previous plans that we've had. There's been many small area plans, and to kind of get those together and see what we've adopted thus far. And there's 7 focus areas, and these include growth management and land use, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So what's a comprehensive plan? A comprehensive plan is a master plan for Waxhaw and the potential areas of annexation and growth. So we had a steering committee that helped create the future land use area. And so that's this large area that goes all the way to South Carolina that you see on the screen. And this is the areas that we could possibly annex. This functioned as a long-range guide for future development, and it sets community goals, policies, and guidelines to direct present and future development. A comprehensive plan is a foundation for the creation of the new Unified Development Ordinance. What it's not is regulation. So it might say, our vision is to have an interconnected trail network in the town. And then in the actual UDO language, you would see the regulations under what circumstances those trails had to be implemented and what they would look like. The comprehensive plan contained a growth sector map, which showed areas that have the infrastructure in place to support development versus those that don't. The restricted growth sector, which is in the brown at the bottom of the map, falls just outside the utility service areas, so there's not water and sewer. There's more substandard roads in these areas, and they're more rural in character. That's where it would be harder to grow in an urban scale. In the pink and yellow areas to the north, that's the intended growth sector that has the necessary infrastructure to support urban development patterns, and it's within and near the current town limits. Implementation priorities from the comprehensive plan draft were identified at a joint work session between the Board of Commissioners, Planning Board, and the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee in November of 2015. So there has been a time since those were drafted. In October 2015, the Board of Commissioners approved Studio Cascade to write a new Unified Development Ordinance for Waxhaw, and they're based out of Spokane, Washington. And they looked at what we had with the comprehensive plan and realized that there wasn't enough guiding documentation to say what zonings we should implement for the different growth sectors. So Then they were hired in April 2016 to create the Comprehensive Plan Policy Bridge, which laid out implementing zones from the growth sectors that gave more guidance and consideration of the highway area, the future Waxhaw Parkway, and different areas around town. So the relationship of a comprehensive plan and a unified development ordinance is that a comprehensive plan has more policy rules, and then the unified development ordinance has the regulations. The comprehensive plan is a long-range plan to guide the creation of the UDO, whereas the unified development ordinance is a regulatory tool to implement the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan is organized by topics, where the unified development ordinance is organized by zoning districts. The comprehensive plan contains a future land use map with recommended land use designations for parcels in town and parcels to annex. And the unified development ordinance contains a zoning map that identifies the exact zoning districts so that you know what your regulations are. The existing UDO, since it was written in 2004, doesn't exactly align with the new comprehensive plan adopted in 2016. So what happens when we get a conditional zoning request or a request for rezoning, conditional use permit? We base our recommendations on the best fit, since there's not currently a perfect match between those two documents. We keep it within the comprehensive plan guidance and use that policy bridge implementation language to see if what is requested makes sense and is good from a planning perspective. The new UDO will be developed from the vision and priorities of the comprehensive plan, and those two documents will be aligned. And the priorities that are being used to craft the new UDO are from the comprehensive plan, and those were identified once again at the joint work session between the Board of Commissioners, Planning Board, and Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee in November of 2015. So those were for more of a form-based, high-quality design, focused urban growth and higher density, expansion through annexations, streamlined processes, and by right development versus conditional development. And what by right means is it would just be approved by staff administratively and not come to the board for a formal process. So the way that the new UDO is set up to be organized, it's going to have 11 chapters, and this is just a list of the chapters. They're pretty much the same, but trying to streamline it and eliminate redundancies. Studio Cascade was the initial consultant contracted to write the UDO, and we'd spent approximately $147,000 of the $169,000 approved by the Board of Commissioners for their contract. When they submitted their drafts, the content was not in compliance with state statutes. It had poor organization, didn't address the priorities of streamlining the document and making it easier to understand. So to give you an idea, our current UDO is about 450 plus pages, and what they submitted to us was in excess of that number of pages. So they had told us it would be about an 80-page document total, and it was just pretty much the same as what we have today. So continuing these drafts would have consumed considerable staff time and exceed the contracted price. So in order to provide the town with a better final draft and stay closer to the initial budget, staff chose to continue the project with Orion Planning and Design. That consultant with Orion Planning and Design has expertise in the North Carolina state statutes. She's worked in North Carolina for a number of years, and she was able to work within a smaller budget. So right now, she has gone through all the drafts and given us Word documents that we can then manipulate and reorganize from a staff level, and we think we can get to the finish line with the $7,500 left in our budget for the project. So there's been a lot of organizational changes since we began the process. Writing a UDO is not a quick process. There's a lot of regulations, and you have to think of the implications for all these regulations that you're creating. and whether they're going to be good for the town. So during this process, there's been 3 town managers and 1 interim town manager, 2 town attorneys, including the last town attorney and the interim attorney, 3 different development services directors, and the planning division is currently short 2 positions. And we are having interviews the next couple weeks, so hopefully we'll get those filled really soon. And just to give you a complete picture of how this affects us, is in switching consultants, now staff is going to be responsible for creating the new zoning map that goes along with the new code. So we'll have to do this in-house, and one of our vacant positions is for the GIS planner. So we don't currently have that capacity. We expect to soon. So how can we proceed given all these changes? So, like I said before, within the last few months, Orion Planning has given us Word documents for each section, and we've devised a path forward in which we do a more intensive review at a staff level, so there's less to do at the consultant level. And the consultant will just read it over, just a second look to make sure it's compliant with state statutes and make sure it's all organized in the best possible way. That way we can get a complete document that's within our current budget. So Alex, our senior planner, and I have been meeting to go through the sections, and we're changing the content, we're reorganizing and eliminating a lot of redundancies. A lot of what the original consultant did was just give us what we currently have with some comments beside it and not actual changes. So this is going to take a lot of effort on our part. To give you an example, our draft administration section, which goes through the processes that are required for a conditional zoning, public hearing, general rezoning, and different processes like that, was pared down from 72 pages to about 20 pages between me and Alex. There was a lot of things that just repeated and things weren't clear. So in order to help us deliver this more quickly, we've gotten an outside planning consultant from the COG, and they're coming in 2 days a week to help with plan review and just day-to-day tasks so that we can focus more on the UDO. Also, we're hiring for those positions right now of the Planner 2 and GIS Planner, which will give us more capacity. And once we have all the chapters reviewed and sent back to the consultant, we'll do a holistic review just to make sure everything, all the cross-references are making sense and things are linked correctly to each other. So you've probably seen this before. With any projects, there's 3 ultimate goals, and that's your time, quality, and money. And in trying to be financially conservative, we're striving for a great quality at a low price, and it's just going to take a little more time. And like I said, we are trying to get more manpower so that we can deliver this more timely. And right now it's our division's top priority. It's balanced with our current workload, so there is only so much we can do on it right now, but hopefully very soon we'll be able to make more progress. When the public draft is available, the Board of Commissioners will be personally notified, and your input's extremely valuable to us. So you'll be given ample time, the time you want, probably a month, I would think, to look through it. At the beginning of the process, there was multiple workshops held, and that was between October of 2015 and March of 2017. So once the public draft is released, we'll hold additional public workshops just to receive any feedback from especially the Planning Board, Board of Commissioners, and the public as well. There's always things that you didn't think of that might be good to know that come up in the public meetings. So staff anticipates probably 2 rounds of public comment and revision after we have the public draft. And after the draft is finalized, it will go to a joint Planning Board and Board of Commissioners work session where the chapters can be collaborated on, and finalized prior to a recommendation by the Planning Board and decision by the Board of Commissioners. So I know that there's probably a lot of questions.
Dates.
Yes, yeah. So right now, the answer probably wouldn't be too optimistic without the capacity that we need. But the good news is that we are trying to fill these empty positions as soon as possible. We are getting the COG consultant in 2 days a week to help with plan review. And once we have those positions filled, I think we'll be able to give you a more optimistic time frame on the date. So very, very soon.
It would be very soon once those positions are filled,
It would be soon that we could get you an anticipated date.
anticipated date.
Yeah.
So with the information that you have already received from Studio Cascade and the work that's already been done towards trying to work on this, what percentage approximately would you say you have completed to date?
I would say that in the reorganization that needs to be done, we're probably 25% good with what we have. So we still have multiple chapters to go through and reorganize.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're saying is 25% good is where you're comfortable. You've got a lot of material.
Yes.
And now you're getting comfortable with the material.
Mm-hmm.
Studio Cascade may have gave you a lot of material looking for feedback, and whatever happened there happened, but you're getting comfortable with each of the piece parts now.
That's correct. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would the public understand it? Would developers understand it? Would it be something that we want to see for Waxhaw? So yeah, getting comfortable with it, making it something that will make our town a better place and not get us into a pickle.
So is it going to be a Christmas present for the dates, or what? Never mind, I won't go there. It's just, in all seriousness, it's, right after the first of the year, we're going to get back into the budget season. And so it's almost like the sooner you can come back with good dates, the better. And the sooner you can come back with, hey, we need this help, other than I get that you have to address the staffing issues. I get that. We all get that. But if there's things that we can be doing or facilitating, because forget opinions about what makes a good UDO and all that, it's impacting our economic development, and our economic development is impacting our tax mixture, and it's creating concerns with high density and low density and all that stuff. There's too much uncertainty in the community that this piece can help clear up. That, it's upon all of us, regardless of what we think of any particular chapter. We have to have a good collaborative effort with the community on to get this righted, because it's been 4 years. As you said, 3 town managers, a couple of attorneys, and multiple development directors. Just a curiosity, I looked at your agenda. Are you addressing the sign ordinance, the holy grail of the sign ordinance, and all the confusion around that in one of these sections?
Yes, so section 5 contains the sign ordinance.
It's called project design as an overarching chapter, but it'll have that sign component.
Because obviously that's one that gets a certain part of the community very interested.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm. So we are doing an overhaul of that, and there was new court cases that we need to base the new revisions on, so content neutral.
Just want to ask a question, because I'm sure if if I was a taxpayer, I'd be wanting answers on this. Greg, I know you weren't the manager here at the time, but can we just get a little bit more detail on the contractual amount to Studio Cascade, what we ended up paying out, and the fact that we don't really have an end product? I mean, what went wrong? Can you expand on that at all? Or Lisa?
I have an opinion. I'm not sure it's one that I would draw a line with, but I think the process was flawed from the beginning with the picking of a company that was not based in the eastern part of the country. I think they were challenged with changes in the board and changes in management, and for whatever reason, they didn't proceed in a timely manner, and maybe made some assumptions. Maybe they were told some things. I don't really know. It became obvious that they were not going to deliver a finished project, and we pulled the plug knowing that it just was not going to happen. But you hate to walk away from an investment, and most of that investment had been spent before I got here. So there's really not a lot that I could do differently other than we did pull the plug, and we brought in somebody who really knows what she's doing and is a outstanding person to complete the project for us, and the staff is very much comfortable with the folks that we're working with now. We think that they will do what we need done to get there. But part of the problem, I think, is the expectations were not maybe agreed to or accepted up front. And this is a very time-consuming process in the amount of years. Most places that do it, they try to get it right. The city of Charlotte's been working on their UDO now for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and they're not done. And so it's not something that you get done in 6 months. And I think that was shared from what I've seen with folks in the past, that it was at least 18 months. But I don't think that was the expectation that kind of got placed in the minds of the public or the minds of the board or even at the staff level. But this is something that you got to get right and not get done fast. And so what all of us who have now inherited it are trying to do is get it done right, because we're not going to get it done fast. So we just have to acknowledge where we are and try to spend the least amount of money getting the very best product that we can that fits the needs of the community moving forward. And so I don't think there's any one thing that you could say you could do this differently. It's a collection of things over years that on a Monday morning you'd say, yeah, we'd probably do this differently if we had been here, or if we had a say in it. But it's where we're at. I think the bottom line is we're going to have a very good UDO. It's going to be thoroughly vetted by people who are here who will utilize it on a daily basis, or getting good impact or input from folks as the process will get completed. I don't know of a project that has said, I'm not going to go to Waxhaw because you don't have a new UDO. They're interested absolutely in when that will happen, but we've had developers come in and have conversations, and so nobody's really waiting for the magic bullet. Now, are people interested in certain sections? Absolutely. The sign ordinance, as the mayor pointed out, there's a lot of people who would like to have some changes or tweaks, but we don't really know of projects that have completely said, just because you don't have a new UDO, we're not going to develop there or not come. We want anybody who's interested in being here now or in the future to come talk to us and let the staff sit down and explain the current process and how you navigate it, and then when there's another process in the future, they'll be happy to do the same thing.
And I think you have to go back, look at the time. There was a lot of emotion about what has now become the Ardmore Apartments, and Studio Cascade was pulled off the UDO and asked to do an assessment of form-based code and all the gaps in form-based code, and then presented that back to staff. But that was a decision made by the then manager at that point in time to say, hey, because we were getting asked questions as a town, can we legally stop the apartments? And then you kind of had to go through and find out where was it permitted, where wasn't it permitted. We had multiple sessions on that, legal sessions about that. So was that the right thing or the wrong thing? Don't know. But it was a thing that they were pulled away to go work on that. And to your point, Commissioner Burns remembers this. We had a meeting. That's the last we heard about it after that, where we all sat here on a morning giving them feedback on chapters. We don't know what happened to it that time, and then things just, they took it, and we don't know what they did with it. We don't know if it was given to the then manager, then the then development director, and done with it. Couldn't even begin to understand that. I questioned at the time, Commissioner Burns, you chime in, I don't know how a consultant can take 6 individual pieces of feedback on a document that thick and try to pull it together. I mean, and that was the task we were given, give us your feedback. And I remember capturing a whole bunch of notes, but I don't know how you pull that together. You got to have collaboration, consensus building, and talk it through, and it was done differently, and that was a challenge. Again, not being critical, it's just we were asked and we did it, and then
It was very disconnected.
yeah. And when Greg came in, I think you saw some of that, and at the time there was no push, so they didn't do any work, and then you put a stop to it.
Yeah, there was a lot of pressure to get something done quickly, and so I think, to be fair to everybody, if you're looking at a car that's only 25% done at best, and you're asked to give input on that car, you can't. And that's what essentially we had at that point in time, is the elected body was given a document that at best could have only been 25% done, and I question if it was 25%, and asked to give feedback on it. And so that's not fair to anybody. That's not fair to the elected body that looked at it back then. It's not fair to the staff that tried to put that all together. I don't know how you have that process have a successful ending. So for whatever reason, that was done, and that's just my assessment.
I mean, I can remember having the discussion, because I circled it here, by right versus conditional. We wanted to have the discussion of where do you draw that line, and we never had that discussion facilitated with us, because there's a place for both of them, and it's not an either or. But we were asked to write about it, and I can only imagine what all 6 individual sets of comments looked like.
So
I mean, it was hard.
I think my comment would be, is it's going to be a whole lot easier for 6 individuals and for community to look at a done draft than to be given a crayon box and say, draw what you think you like, because then you get 15 different versions. So you'll get something that you'll be able to react to. And so the example that I'm going to continue to use, because it's one that everybody understands, is you'll have a decision whether you want to have a gas station by right or you want it to be conditional. And if it's conditional, what's that process? And if it's by right, how can you design, using a form-based code, a gas station that you think could go anywhere in a particular zoning designation? And so there are ways to do that so that you don't turn a gas station into the typical gas station. So that'll be a decision that the board can give guidance to staff on, and that's just one usage in a lot of different uses that you'll get to react to.
But on the funding question, money was diverted to address the bridge document when that gap was identified, and then the form-based code, because of the tone and tenor that was in Waxhaw at that point in time about the apartments.
Okay, so we did get something out of the money. We were contractually obligated to pay what we've paid. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Just didn't get to where, I think the bigger lesson is the process used was to go through an interview process first at the planning board, and then the recommendation come forward. And be honest with you, I would probably look at that and say, I think we stand a far better chance on anything like this technically oriented to have our subject matter experts, the staff and the manager, come forward with recommendations than than boards that are only in it on a part-time basis once a month. That's just a personal opinion. That's a big lesson learned.
And there
That's not
was,
a criticism, it's just a lesson learned.
yeah, there was, I don't know if it was the last meeting or one of the last meetings we had where I think the manager and the consultant said, you know, ask us all a question. Do we go forward, or is this what you want? Make up your mind. And we didn't have enough information to really say we want to go forward or not. I said no. There's not enough here to go
There
forward.
wasn't enough there to go forward. No, we want edits, and
Yeah.
we didn't get, but again, you're bringing back the edits.
I feel very confident going forward that the board's going to get a good version to look at, and you're going to get adequate time to do that and have good public feedback and input, and we'll get a good UDO out of it. I don't want to spend a whole lot more time looking at an autopsy of what might have happened on something before. We're gonna do our very best to deliver something that's cost effective but is done well. So.
Well, I look forward to getting that in front of us this budget year so we can prove it.
So, Lisa, do you have any idea when? Is it 6 months, do you think, realistically? 6 months?
The way we were trying to figure it out is calculating how much time Alex and I have spent on the current draft. And that, if without the staffing, I just can't give an estimate that's based in anything.
Okay.
So I would hope maybe 6 months. I don't know. But I feel the urgency just as you do, and I want to get you an estimate as soon as we get those positions filled and see what we're capacity.
But Greg, I'll turn to you. It's fair to say that what you're pushing for, you're trying to get this done in this budget year.
And quite frankly, the resources are not the issue. If they need $5,000 more to have the COG help with additional planning, we have the flexibility to do that. Really, time is the issue, and you've got two of our most senior people on staff here, and if we get another project that comes in that's going to be all hands on deck, that includes them. So we don't have the luxury of having people that are just sitting there doing the day-to-day, and their time can be focused 100%. They're still trying to meet those deadlines that we guarantee a developer that will turn a plan around. So if they submit it, we've got to get those comments out on a time frame as well. So that's the difficult thing that Lisa doesn't know what's going to come in the door tomorrow. That's the problem. So if we said it's going to be 3 months and we get a big project, we're off the line automatically.
Other questions? Were these back up after the?
Yeah, I had a couple backup slides,
Okay.
but I don't need to go over them.
Thank you both very much.
And if you think of any other things, just, send them to Greg and he'll shoot them to me. Any other questions?
We just look forward to you coming back and giving us the firm date. All right, those were the two update items, and with that, we'll adjourn the work session and we'll get back together in 50 minutes for the regular meeting. Thanks, everybody.